The great halls of Zera Prime were filled with silence. Tall walls of crystal shimmered faintly under the glow of alien moons. The alien empire had stood for thousands of years, ruled by the iron hand of the Queen. Few dared to oppose her, for her armies were vast and her spies reached every corner of the stars. Yet in one forgotten corridor of the palace, a quiet sound broke the silence. A young woman named Alira pressed her back against the cold wall. She was not a queen, not a soldier, not even someone of high rank. She was a servant in the palace, unnoticed by most and ignored by all. But on this night she carried a secret so dangerous that her life would never be the same. She heard footsteps coming closer. Her heart pounded like a drum. She wanted to run, but her legs would not move. As the shadows grew long, a human stepped into view. His name was Daniel, one of the few humans allowed to stay on Zera Prime under a fragile alliance. He was not a soldier. He was not a noble. He was only a simple envoy, sent to watch and report back to his people. Yet Alira knew he was the only one she could trust. When Daniel reached her, he frowned. He had seen fear before, but the way Alira trembled was different. She lifted her eyes to him and whispered, her voice barely louder than the wind. "Please stop." Daniel froze. His instincts told him something was wrong. "Stop what?" he asked in a calm tone, trying not to frighten her further. Alira pressed her hand against her chest as if holding something back. She shook her head and whispered again. "Stop looking. Stop asking questions. If they know what you found, they will destroy you." Daniel's mind raced. For weeks he had been following small trails, small pieces of information that did not fit. The Queen's empire claimed peace, but there were rumors of hidden prisons, secret experiments, and entire colonies that had gone silent. He had uncovered fragments of records that hinted at something vast, something dangerous. And now here was Alira trembling before him, begging him to stop. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Alira, I do not know what you mean, but if you know something, you can tell me. I will listen." Her eyes filled with tears. She wanted to trust him, but fear chained her tongue. At last she shook her head. "If you keep searching, you will not survive. The Queen's Guard is already watching you." Daniel felt a chill. He had suspected as much, but to hear it from Alira confirmed his worst fear. Still, he could not walk away. Humans had come too far to bow before fear. He spoke firmly. "If there is truth hidden here, then someone must uncover it. If not me, then who?" Alira's hands tightened. For a moment she said nothing. Then, with trembling fingers, she reached for the hem of her servant's shirt. Daniel was startled, but before he could react, she pulled the cloth aside just enough to reveal the mark burned into her skin. It was a dark brand, shaped like a spiral of fire. Daniel's eyes widened. "What is that?" She flinched and quickly covered it again. Her voice was full of pain. "It is the mark of the hidden. Those who carry it are prisoners without chains. The Queen owns us. We are used for things no one speaks of. If you keep digging, you will find what she hides, but then you will be hunted. You must stop." For the first time, Daniel understood the weight of the secret. This was not only politics. This was not only about power. The Queen was hiding something deep, something tied to her rule, something tied to people like Alira. He placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "Alira, I cannot stop now. Not after what you have shown me. This is bigger than you or me. This is about truth, and if truth is hidden, then humanity must stand against it." Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to scream at him to run, to leave, to save himself. But his words lit a spark in her heart. For the first time in years, she saw someone willing to fight, someone who would not bow to fear. Still, she shook her head. "You do not understand. If you move against her, you will bring war. The Queen will unleash her wrath not only on you, but on your people. You cannot win." Daniel looked at her, steady and calm. "Maybe we cannot win with ships and armies, but we can win with courage. If humans do not fight for truth, then what are we?" The word struck her like a blade. She looked into his eyes and saw no fear. For a moment, she wished she could believe in such strength. But she knew the danger. She lowered her voice until it was almost nothing. "Then I will show you. But once you see it, there will be no turning back." Daniel nodded. "Show me." Alira turned her head toward the dark corridor. She listened carefully. No footsteps, no shadows, only silence. Then she motioned for him to follow. They moved quickly through the twisting halls, past silent guards and empty chambers. She knew every secret path, every hidden door. Finally, they reached a locked gate deep beneath the palace. Alira's hands shook as she pressed her palm against a crystal panel. The gate slid open with a sound like a sigh. Beyond it lay darkness, heavy and cold. Daniel stepped inside with her. The air was thick and he could feel something pressing against his chest. As they walked, faint lights began to glow along the walls, revealing shapes that made his heart stop. Rows of capsules lined the chamber. Inside each capsule floated a figure. Some were alien, some human, some unrecognizable. All of them bore the same spiral mark that Alira had shown him. They were alive, but their eyes were closed. Daniel stared in shock. "What is this?" Alira's voice was hollow. "This is what the Queen hides. This is the prison of silence. These are the ones who are taken. Their voices are locked away. Their lives are stolen to keep her throne strong. If you speak of this, you will be hunted until the stars burn out." Daniel's fists clenched. His people had faced war, famine, and fear, but nothing like this. He knew what this meant. The Queen's empire was built not on honor or strength, but on chains and secrets. Alira turned to him, tears running down her face. "Please, Daniel, do not carry this burden. Forget what you saw. Forget me. If you try to fight her, she will destroy you." Daniel shook his head. His voice was steady. "No, this is not something I can forget. Humanity does not walk away from truth. If this is the heart of her power, then this is where we must stand." Alira's body trembled. She wanted to stop him, to turn him away, but deep inside her chest a spark had begun to grow. For the first time in her life, she saw someone who would not bow, someone who would not look away, and she whispered, almost against her will, "Then may the stars protect you." Daniel looked around the chamber of silence. He knew this was only the beginning. The truth had been uncovered, and nothing would ever be the same. Daniel could not sleep that night. The images of the capsules haunted his mind. Faces of humans and aliens floated behind the glass, trapped in silent prisons. Some looked peaceful, others twisted with pain. He had seen enough in his life to know this was no dream. The Queen's empire was built on stolen lives. He sat in the small chamber given to him as a guest. The walls were smooth stone, but the silence pressed on him harder than iron. He thought of Earth, of his people far away. Would they believe him if he told them? Or would they call him a fool? A man who imagined ghosts in the shadows. Alira's warning echoed in his ears. "Stop searching. Forget what you saw. Save yourself." But he knew he could not. Humanity had been called many things by the stars, weak, primitive, deathworlders. But one truth remained. When humans saw chains, they broke them. A soft knock pulled him from his thoughts. Daniel rose quickly and opened the door. Alira stood there, her face pale under the dim light. She wore the plain clothes of a servant, her head bowed as if afraid someone might see her. "May I come in?" she whispered. Daniel nodded and stepped aside. She slipped inside, moving quickly, and shut the door behind her. For a long moment she said nothing. Her hands twisted together as if fighting some inner storm. Finally she raised her eyes. "You should leave this world. You should return to your people before it is too late. Once the Queen knows what you have seen, you will never escape." Daniel shook his head. "I cannot leave. You showed me the truth. Now I must act." Her eyes hardened. "You do not understand. The Queen is not like other rulers. She sees everything. Her spies are everywhere. You think courage will save you, but courage alone will lead you to death." Daniel's voice was steady. "Then tell me how to fight her." "Tell me what she fears." Alira turned away. She pressed her hands against the wall as if searching for strength. At last she spoke in a low voice. "There is one thing she fears. The mark we carry. It is not only a symbol. It is a chain. It ties us to her power. If the mark is broken, her control weakens. But no one has ever broken it. Those who tried vanished." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Then I will find a way. If the mark is her chain, then I will break it." She spun toward him, her face filled with both fear and anger. "You speak as if it is easy. Do you know how many have tried? Do you know how many lie in the chambers of silence because they dared to resist? Do not speak of breaking chains if you cannot bear the weight of them." Her words cut deep, but Daniel did not flinch. He stepped closer, his gaze firm. "Then help me bear it. You know the paths of this palace. You know the secrets. I cannot fight her alone, but with you I can." Alira's breath caught. For years she had hidden, obeying the Queen, burying her hope deep in her heart. Now here was a human, speaking of defiance, speaking of freedom. She wanted to believe, but the fear of death clung to her like a second skin. Silence hung heavy between them. Finally Alira whispered, If you truly mean this, then you must see the other chamber. What you saw last night was only the surface. There is more, far worse. If you see it and still wish to fight, then I will help you. But if you turn back, I will never speak of this again." Daniel nodded without hesitation. "Show me." Alira looked at him as if searching his soul. Then she gave a small nod. "Meet me at the lower gate tomorrow night. Come alone. If anyone follows, we are both dead." She turned quickly and left before he could reply. The door closed softly behind her. Daniel stood in silence, his fists tight at his sides. Tomorrow night would decide everything. The next day dragged like a weight. Daniel went through the motions of his role as an envoy, meeting officials, speaking empty words, and smiling when needed. But behind his calm face, his mind burned. He watched the queen from across the grand hall. She sat upon her throne of crystal, her golden crown shining under the lights. To all who saw her, she was beauty and power made flesh. But Daniel now knew the truth. Her empire was built on silence. Her smile was carved from chains. The queen's gaze swept across the hall. For a moment her eyes rested on him. Daniel felt the weight of her stare like a blade at his throat. She knew something. Perhaps not all, but enough. He forced his face to remain calm, bowing with respect like the others. But inside his heart raced. He had to move carefully. One mistake and Alira would pay the price. When the night finally came, Daniel slipped through the empty halls. He moved like a shadow, careful not to draw attention. At the lower gate, he found Alira waiting. Her face was tense, her eyes scanning the darkness. "You came," she whispered. "I said I would," Daniel replied. Without another word, she led him down a narrow passage. The walls were damp, the air thick with dust. Torches flickered faintly, casting long shadows. They moved deeper and deeper until the sound of the palace above faded away. At last they reached a vast chamber hidden beneath the earth. Alira pressed her hand against a panel and the walls came alive with light. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Before him stretched a hall larger than any he had ever seen. Thousands of capsules lined the floor, glowing faintly. But these were different from the ones he had seen before. These figures were not sleeping. They were awake. Their eyes stared out from behind the glass, wide with terror. Their hands pressed against the barriers, their mouths open in silent cries. Daniel stepped forward, his stomach turning. He could feel their pain, their fear. "What is this?" Alira's voice trembled. "These are the ones the queen feeds upon. Their life is drained to strengthen her rule. Their silence is her power. Every mark burned into our skin ties us to her throne. When she wishes, she can draw strength from us. That is why no one can resist her." Daniel turned toward her, his eyes blazing. "Then breaking the mark is not only freedom for you, it is the key to ending her power." Alira nodded slowly. "Yes, but no one has ever done it. The mark is bound to our very blood. To fight it is to fight death itself." Daniel stared at the prisoners trapped behind the glass. Their eyes begged for release, their hands reaching out to him. Something inside him hardened. Humanity had always been underestimated by the stars. But when pushed, humans did not break. They rose. He placed his hand against the glass of one capsule. The prisoner inside was a young man, alien but with eyes full of desperate hope. Daniel spoke softly, not to Alira, not to himself, but to all of them. "You are not forgotten. Humanity does not turn away from chains. I swear to you I will find a way." The prisoner's eyes widened as if hearing the promise through the barrier. Alira watched, her throat tight. She had lived her whole life in fear. Yet in that moment, watching Daniel stand against the darkness, she felt something stir. Hope. But even as the spark grew, she knew danger was near. She grabbed his arm, her voice sharp. "We must go. The guards will come soon. If they find us here, we are lost." Daniel nodded. They moved quickly back through the passage, their steps silent but swift. Every sound made them jump, every shadow felt alive. When at last they reached the surface, the night sky spread above them. Alira leaned against the wall, her chest heaving. She looked at Daniel, her voice unsteady. "Now you know. Do you still wish to fight?" Daniel's answer came without hesitation. "Yes, more than ever. The queen cannot be allowed to rule through silence. Humanity will stand, and with us so will you." Alira closed her eyes. Fear still gripped her, but his words lit a fire inside her heart. For the first time she dared to imagine a world without chains. But far above them, in her throne room of crystal, the queen sat with her eyes closed. A faint smile touched her lips, she already knew, and the game of shadows had begun. The queen sat on her throne of crystal, eyes half closed as if lost in thought. Around her, ministers and generals whispered their plans for trade, war, and conquest. Yet her attention was elsewhere. Deep within her mind, she felt a ripple in the current of power. Someone had stepped into her silence. Someone had touched the forbidden chambers. Her lips curved into a faint smile. She did not need spies to tell her. The marks burned faintly across her subject's skin. Through them she felt every breath, every shiver, every secret. She had ruled for centuries because no one could hide from her. Now a single human thought himself clever enough to defy her. She opened her eyes. "Bring me the envoy. Bring me Daniel." The order spread like fire through the palace. Guards in silver armor moved swiftly, searching for the human guest. Yet when they reached his quarters, the chamber was empty. Daniel had already fled. Alira led Daniel through the narrow passages under the palace. She knew the guards would come for him the moment the queen sensed something. Every servant whispered that the queen could see through walls, but Alira knew the truth. She could not see everything, not yet. There were cracks in her chains, cracks only those who lived in the shadows could find. "This way," Alira urged, her voice sharp but quiet. She pushed open a hidden panel, revealing a dark stairway that spiraled down into the earth. Daniel followed without question. At the bottom they entered a cavern carved long before the palace had been built. Crystals glowed faintly in the walls, casting a ghostly light. The air smelled of dust and stone, untouched by the queen's hand. Daniel looked around. "What is this place?" Alira's voice softened. "The old tunnels. They were built by those who lived here before the queen. Few remember them now. I found them when I was young. They became my refuge when fear was too heavy." Daniel touched the wall, feeling the cool crystal under his hand. "Then they will be our refuge now. But hiding will not be enough. We need to act." Alira turned, her eyes searching his face. "Act how? You saw the chambers. You saw the prisoners. Do you think you can free them? Do you think you can stand against her armies, against her power?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "I know I cannot do it alone. But humanity has faced tyrants before. Every empire falls when the truth is revealed. If we bring the truth to light, others will rise with us." Alira's eyes filled with doubt. She wanted to believe, but fear clung to her heart. "You speak of hope as if it is stronger than chains. But the queen's chains are not only metal. They are burned into us. Even if you break the walls of her prisons, the marks remain. We are bound." Daniel stepped closer, his voice steady. "Then I will find a way to break the mark. Somewhere in this world lies the answer. We only need to uncover it." Alira lowered her gaze. She wanted to tell him he was chasing a dream, but something in his voice made her pause. He spoke not as a man lost in fantasy, but as one who believed with his whole being. And belief, she realized, was a weapon the queen feared. Far above, the queen's guards searched the palace with growing frustration. Daniel was gone, and Alira with him. The queen sat silent, her smile never fading. She had expected this. The human was bold, reckless, but boldness often led to mistakes. She only had to wait, and he would deliver himself into her hands. Still, she felt something stir. Something she had not felt in centuries. Hope, faint and fragile, flickered among the marked. It whispered like wind in a locked room. It was dangerous. The queen rose from her throne. Her voice carried through the hall, cold and sharp. "Double the patrols. Search the old tunnels. They will not escape me." In the tunnels, Daniel and Alira moved carefully. Each step echoed faintly against the stone. The deeper they went, the more the crystals glowed, as if guiding their way. Finally, they entered a wide cavern. Strange symbols were carved into the floor, old and worn. In the center stood a pedestal of stone cracked with age. Alira stopped, her breath catching. "I know this place. I found it once as a child. My mark burned when I stood here. I never returned." Daniel studied the pedestal. Faint lines ran across its surface, glowing with the same spiral shape as the mark on Alira's skin. He placed his hand on it. A pulse of energy ran through him, sharp and cold. He pulled back quickly, his hand tingling. "This is connected to the mark," he said. Alira nodded slowly. "Yes, this is where it began. The queen did not create the mark. She found it long ago in these depths. She bound it to her rule. That is why she is strong." Daniel's eyes lit with determination. "Then if we can understand it, we can break it." Alira hesitated. "Or it will break us." Before Daniel could answer, a sound echoed through the tunnel. The sharp clatter of boots on stone. Torches flared in the distance. The Queen's guards were coming. Alira's heart pounded. We must run, but Daniel shook his head. No, we cannot run forever. We must fight. Alira's eyes widened. Fight them? With what? You have no weapon. Daniel looked around the cavern. He saw loose stones, broken crystal shards, shadows that could hide them. Humanity has always fought with what we had. We will not win by strength, but by will. The guards entered, their silver armor gleaming in the torchlight. Their leader raised his spear, his voice harsh. By order of the Queen, surrender the human. The servant will be shown mercy if she obeys. Alira trembled, but Daniel stepped forward. His voice rang clear. I am Daniel of Earth, and I will not bow. The guards moved forward. Daniel grabbed a shard of crystal from the ground and swung it with all his strength. The shard cracked against a guard's helmet, knocking him back. The fight exploded. Alira ducked as a spear thrust toward her. She grabbed a fallen torch and swung it wildly, flames bursting against silver armor. The cavern filled with shouts, the clash of stone and metal, the crack of crystal. Daniel fought with desperate strength. Each blow was heavy, each strike fueled by the faces he had seen in the chambers of silence. He was not a soldier, but humans had always fought when cornered. And in that moment he was more than a guest, more than an envoy. He was defiance itself. Alira struck again and again, fear turning into fire. For years she had been silent, chained by her mark. Now for the first time she screamed as she fought, her voice echoing through the cavern. One guard fell, then another, but more pressed forward. Daniel's arms ached, his chest burned, yet he did not stop. He could not stop. At last the guards hesitated. Two lay broken on the ground, others wounded. The leader glared at Daniel, his voice cold. You cannot win. The Queen already knows where you are. You will die here. Daniel stood tall, blood on his face, his crystal shard still in his hand. Maybe, but I will not die in silence. The leader snarled and signaled retreat. The guards withdrew, dragging their fallen with them. Their footsteps faded into the tunnels. Daniel dropped the shard, his chest heaving. Alira rushed to him, her eyes wide with both fear and wonder. You fought them. You stood against them. No one has ever done that. Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow. Then let this be the beginning. If one human can fight, so can others. And if one servant can rise, so can all. Alira's heart raced. She looked at him and saw something she had never seen before. Not just courage, but the power to ignite courage in others. For the first time, she dared to believe. But above, in her throne of crystal, the Queen opened her eyes. She had felt the clash, felt the mark tremble in her grasp. The human was dangerous, not because of his strength, but because he carried something she could not control. Hope. Her voice echoed through the halls, cold and sharp. Bring me every soldier. Seal the tunnels. The human will not live to see another dawn. The cavern was quiet again after the clash. Only the sound of Daniel's heavy breathing and Alira's pounding heart remained. The torch flickered weakly, its light casting long shadows on the walls. The floor was scattered with broken shards of crystal, bloodstains and signs of struggle. Alira knelt beside Daniel, who leaned against the wall, his arm trembling from the fight. She tore a strip from her sleeve and bound a cut on his arm. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady. You fought them like no one I have ever seen. But they will return, and in greater numbers. Daniel's eyes were hard, his voice calm. Let them come. Every battle we survive makes their fear grow. The Queen will learn that humans do not bow. Alira looked into his eyes, her chest tight. For so long she had lived in silence, believing resistance was useless. Now in this wounded human she saw a different truth, a fire that chains could not put out. Still, fear gnawed at her. She lowered her voice. The Queen will not rest until you are gone. She will burn the tunnels, flood them with soldiers, hunt you to the ends of the stars. Do you understand what you have started? Daniel nodded. Yes, a war of truth. And wars are not won in a single battle. We need allies. We need others to rise. Alira hesitated. Others are afraid. They have lived too long under her chains. They will not fight. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes intense. They will if they see they are not alone. One spark can light 1,000 fires. Her heart trembled at his words. She wanted to believe. She wanted to see her people rise. But the mark burned faintly on her skin, a reminder of the Queen's hold. Could hope truly fight chains of blood in silence? For the next few days, Daniel and Alira moved through the tunnels, avoiding patrols and searching for other hidden chambers. Alira guided him with the knowledge she had gathered over years of service. Daniel listened carefully, asking questions, always searching for patterns and truths. They discovered more than they expected. Small groups of servants, broken and tired, hiding in the forgotten halls. Old records carved into the stone, telling of a time before the queen when the marks were unknown. And whispers of others who once tried to resist, whose names had been erased but whose courage remained in secret stories. Each discovery deepened Daniel's resolve. Your people are not broken. They are waiting. They only need a reason to rise. Alira studied him as he spoke to the frightened servants. He did not speak like a conqueror or a king. He spoke like one who carried their pain as his own. Slowly, she saw the fear in their eyes shift. Some listened. Some dared to hope. One night, in a hidden chamber lit by crystal fire, Daniel stood before a small group of servants and laborers. They had gathered in secret, risking death to hear him. Alira watched from the shadows, her heart racing. Daniel raised his voice, steady and strong. I am Daniel of Earth. I have seen what the Queen hides. I have seen the chambers of silence. You live in fear, but fear is her weapon, not your chain. You are more than marks on your skin. You are voices waiting to be heard. If you rise, she will tremble. The servants whispered among themselves. Some shook their heads, afraid. Others clenched their fists, their eyes burning. One young man stepped forward, his voice rough. And if we rise, she will kill us all. What hope do we have? Daniel looked at him and spoke without hesitation. The hope that chains can break. The hope that silence can end. The hope that together we are stronger than her throne. She is one and we are many. If humanity has learned anything, it is this. No empire lasts forever. Rise with me and you will see her fall. The chamber was silent for a moment. Then slowly one servant raised his hand, then another. Soon half the chamber had lifted their hands. Alira's breath caught. It was small, fragile, but real. A beginning. Far above, in her throne of crystal, the queen felt the tremor again. Whispers of defiance. Sparks of hope. Her smile faded. She had underestimated the human. He was not only a fighter, he was a voice that spread like fire. She summoned her generals. The tunnels burn tomorrow. Leave no stone unturned. The human and his allies must be crushed. Her generals bowed. Yet behind their eyes the queen saw the faintest flicker of unease. Even they had begun to feel the ripple. The next day, Daniel and Alira gathered their small group deeper in the tunnels. The air was heavy with fear, but also with something new. A spark of unity. Alira stood at Daniel's side, her heart torn. She had never imagined standing against the queen. Yet here she was, guiding people she once thought too afraid to move. She turned to Daniel. They will come soon. When they do, we cannot win by fighting alone. We need something greater. Daniel nodded. His mind raced. He thought of the pedestal, the glowing mark carved into stone. It was the heart of the queen's power. If it could be broken, perhaps the chains would weaken. He turned to the group. There is a place beneath the palace where the mark began. If we can reach it, if we can break it, the queen's power will falter. That is our chance, the group murmured in fear. The palace was death itself. But Alira stepped forward. He speaks the truth. I have seen the pedestal. It ties us to her. If it falls, so does her hold. The group looked at her, their eyes wide. Alira, once a servant, now stood as a voice of courage. Her chest tightened, but she did not look away. Daniel raised his hand. It will not be easy. Many of us may not return. But if we succeed, we will free not only ourselves, but every voice trapped in silence. Will you walk with me? One by one, hands rose. Fear still clung to them, but courage burned brighter. Alira felt tears sting her eyes. For the first time, she saw her people rise. That night, they moved through the tunnels as one. Daniel led at the front, Alira at his side, the others following close. Each step was heavy with danger, but also with hope. When they reached the cavern of the pedestal, the air hummed with power. The spiral mark glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Daniel stepped forward. He touched the pedestal again. The cold energy surged through him stronger than before. He clenched his teeth and held on. Alira rushed to his side. Daniel, stop. It will kill you. But Daniel shook his head. If the chain can be broken, it must begin here. The group watched in silence as Daniel pressed both hands against the stone. His body shook, his face twisted with pain. The mark on Alira's skin burned brighter and brighter, as if the queen herself was fighting back. Alira cried out, clutching her arm. The others fell to their knees, writhing as their marks blazed with fire. The cavern filled with screams of pain. The pedestal glowed, cracks spreading across its surface. Daniel roared, pushing with all his strength. his voice echoing through the stone. "You will not rule in silence. Not anymore." With a deafening crack, the pedestal shattered. Light burst through the cavern, blinding and fierce. The marks on their skin flared, then dimmed. Alira gasped, looking at her arm. The spiral was still there, but faint, weaker. She felt lighter, freer. The others cried out in shock. Their chains had not vanished, but the weight had lessened. The queen's grip was broken, if only slightly. Daniel fell to his knees, his chest heaving, his body trembling. Alira rushed to him, holding him up. Tears ran down her face. "You did it. You truly did it." He looked at her, his voice weak but steady. "This is only the beginning. Now they know the chains can break." The group rose slowly, their eyes wide with awe. They touched their marks, feeling the change. For the first time, hope burned brighter than fear. Far above, the queen screamed. Her throne of crystal cracked. Her crown flickered with fading light. She clutched her chest, feeling the bond weaken. The human had touched the heart of her power, and though she still ruled, though her chains still bound, the silence was broken. Her voice shook the halls of the palace. "Find him, kill him, or everything we built will fall." The empire trembled, and the fire of rebellion began to spread. The tunnels shook with the queen's rage. Crystals cracked in the palace above, sending shards raining down into the dark caverns. The sound echoed like thunder, warning everyone that the queen's wrath had been awakened. Daniel leaned on Alira's arm as they moved quickly through the narrow passage. His body was weak from breaking the pedestal, but his spirit still burned. Behind them, the small band of servants followed, their eyes glowing with new fire. For the first time, they were not only survivors. They were rebels, Alira whispered as they walked. "She knows. Her soldiers will come in force. We cannot stay here." Daniel nodded weakly. "Then we do not stay. We move, we grow, we spread. We give her too many voices to silence at once." Her chest tightened. She had never believed such words possible. Yet here she was, guiding her people away from fear and into something new. The queen did not wait long. The next day, armies of crystal-armored soldiers flooded the tunnels. They carried blades that hummed with energy, their eyes cold and merciless. But the tunnels were alive with whispers of defiance. Daniel's band had already moved from chamber to chamber, speaking to those still bound by fear. Each word planted seeds. Each spark lit another. Soon the soldiers found not silence but resistance. Small groups of servants struck back with crude weapons, using the tunnels themselves as traps. For every rebel cut down, 2 more rose. The queen's generals grew frustrated. The humans' fire had spread faster than they imagined. The queen's command was clear. "Bring him to me. Alive or broken, no chain must fall." Daniel knew the fight was far from victory. His strength was still weak, but his voice was enough. He stood before new groups each night, speaking with fire and truth. "You feel the weight lessen, do you not? You feel the queen's hold weaken. That is the sound of her throne cracking. You are not alone. You are the storm she cannot stop." The people listened. Fear still clung to them, but courage grew stronger. Even children began whispering his name. To them, he was not only human. He was proof that chains could break. Alira watched it unfold with awe. She had seen her people bent and silent for so long. Now she saw their eyes bright with hope. She never thought she would see the day. But she also knew the queen would not rest until Daniel was destroyed. At last, the queen herself came down into the tunnels. Her crown of crystal burned with light, her steps shaking the ground. Her soldiers spread before her like a storm. The rebels gathered in a wide cavern lit by glowing veins of stone. Daniel stood at their front, Alira beside him. Their group had grown from a handful to hundreds. They carried tools, stones, stolen blades. Not much, but enough to show they would not bow. The queen's voice cut through the cavern like a blade. "Foolish human, you bring nothing but death. These weak ones cannot rise. You cannot save them. Go now and I will end your suffering quickly." Daniel stepped forward. His body still hurt, but his voice was strong. "I will not bow." "And neither will they. Your chains are breaking. Your silence is ending. The voices you crushed are rising." The queen laughed, cold and sharp. "Voices mean nothing. Only power rules. And I am power." She raised her hand. The marks on every rebel's skin flared with burning fire. Many cried out, falling to their knees. The queen smiled, certain of her control, but Daniel did not fall. His mark burned, yet he held his ground. He raised his fist and shouted, his voice echoing through the stone. "Stand, do not let her win. Fight her fire with your fire." The rebels looked at him, Trembling, they rose again, one by one. Their pain turned into shouts. Their cries filled the cavern, drowning the queen's laughter. The queen's smile faded. For the first time, her control did not bend them fully. She felt the pedestal's loss, the weakness spreading through her chains. Daniel charged forward. The rebels followed, their cries shaking the walls. The battle exploded. Soldiers of crystal clashed with servants wielding blades of stone. Sparks lit the cavern. The air filled with roars, shouts, and the crack of breaking chains. Elira fought at Daniel's side, moving with fierce courage. She blocked strikes, guided rebels, and struck with precision. Her heart pounded. Not with fear, but with freedom. Daniel pressed forward, straight toward the queen. He knew the war would not end until she was faced. The queen's power was immense. With each gesture, she struck down rebels, shattering the ground beneath them. Her crown blazed like fire, her voice thundering. But Daniel did not falter. He moved with human strength, raw and unyielding. Each strike he blocked, each wound he endured, only fueled his will. At last, he stood before her. She looked down at him, her eyes filled with fury. "You are nothing. A single human in a world that is mine." Daniel raised his voice so all could hear. "Then let this human be the stone that breaks your throne." He lunged. Their clash shook the cavern. Her crystal blade struck against his stolen steel. Sparks burst. The rebels cried out, watching the duel that would decide their future. The queen struck with overwhelming strength, but Daniel fought with something greater. Not power, not chains, but will. The will of a human who refused to bow. Each time she struck him down, he rose again. Each time she laughed, he silenced her with his steel. At last, with a final roar, he drove his blade into her crown. The crystal shattered, light bursting through the cavern. The queen screamed, her power unraveling. The marks on every rebel's skin dimmed, their fire gone. The chains were broken. The queen fell to her knees, her crown in shards. Her voice trembled with rage and disbelief. How can a human defeat me?" Daniel stood over her, his chest heaving, his face fierce. "Because you rule with chains. We rise with voices, and voices cannot be silenced forever." With one final strike, he ended her reign. Silence filled the cavern. Then slowly the rebels raised their voices. Not in fear, not in pain, but in triumph. Cries of freedom echoed through the tunnels, rising higher and higher. Elira rushed to Daniel's side, her eyes shining with tears. "You did it. She is gone. We are free." Daniel smiled faintly, his strength nearly gone. "Not me, us, all of you. Your voices ended her rule." The rebels gathered, lifting their hands. For the first time in countless years, they felt no mark burning on their skin. Their chains were truly broken. In the days that followed, the palace fell. The soldiers, freed from the queen's control, laid down their weapons. The people filled the halls with songs, their silence replaced with unity. Elira stood with Daniel at the heart of the palace, where once the queen's throne had towered. The crystals lay shattered, their glow gone. She turned to him, her voice soft. "What now? The queen is gone, but we must rebuild. We must learn to live free." Daniel looked out over the halls where people now walked unbound. His voice was steady. "Now you rise as your own, not as servants, not as prisoners, but as people. Humanity will stand with you if you wish it. But your future is yours to shape." Elira felt her heart swell. She had once believed her people would never rise. Now she saw them laughing, speaking, building. For the first time, she believed in tomorrow. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your voice carried them as much as mine. Never forget that," she smiled, her eyes bright. "And never forget that a single human lit the fire that freed us all." That night, the stars shone above the broken palace. The rebels gathered under the sky, free to speak, free to sing. Their voices rose together, filling the air with strength. Daniel sat quietly, watching them. He knew his journey was far from over. There were other worlds, other chains, other voices waiting to rise. But here, on this night, he allowed himself to breathe, to hear the sound of freedom, to know that humanity had stood tall, and that their fire had burned brighter than fear. And in the heart of the new dawn, Elira and her people stood with him, no longer servants, no longer bound, but free. The silence was gone, the voices had risen, and they would never fall again.